I hate that look people give me when I try to explain short-term luck and long-range edge. They look at me like I'm a moron when I'm basically explaining to them the meaning of life. What I just read to you was written to me by a client, and I just couldn't wait to share it because when I read this, I was like, wow, this really captures it. In fact, it inspired me to write an article called But It's Not Gambling, and that's what this video is based on. I wrote that about 5 years ago, and since then I've done a lot of coaching, helped a lot of people through these very issues of how to explain this stuff about what your plan is for poker and how wonderful it's going to be. And so I'm just going to go through a bunch of that stuff here today. Part of the problem is that there are a lot of people who know just a little bit about poker from watching it on TV. And one of the things they see is the odds. They see, okay, this guy's going to win 80% of the time, this guy's going to win 20% of the time. They see that constant calculation in the little readouts. And then they also watch that the 20% hand wins a number of times. And so in their mind, it just reinforces this idea that it's gambling and that it's luck. And even though they know that these top players are on TV because they have some sort of skill, and even though these players that, a lot of players that play a little bit of poker, they know they wouldn't have any chance against the experts. So that right there tells you that it's not luck, but still they can't get past the idea that it's gambling. Unsophisticated gamblers just can't get over that. So it's really, really hard to explain this stuff to the uninitiated. If you keep trying to explain something to somebody and you just know it's not getting through and that there's this giant gap, and it's the same type of gap that can happen between, say, evolutionists and creationists, or different economic theories, or even different poker theories. Well, I'll just use the Flat Earth Society as an example. There does exist a group of people who believe that the world is flat, and they have a whole theory that explains everything in terms of the planetary motions and every single possible thing. That sounds completely ridiculous, obviously, that anyone could feel that way, but they do exist. And if you're talking to one of these people, and if you were to try to approach your argument using logic and using evidence and using science, it won't work. And after a little while, you'll know it's not going to work. And then at that point, if you continue driving it home using the same method of logic, then who's the fool? You are. And then even more foolish is getting upset over it, because we have no control over what's going on in other people's minds. So if you're trying to explain your life of poker to somebody and it's not getting through, and you get mad at them for that, that's not going to help you sell the idea of you being a professional. So we're going to look at family, friends, and lovers, and then I'm going to end with what I feel is the solution to this problem. When I moved to California in 1997 to play poker, I had already been grinding full-time in my hometown in home games for 7 years, and my family still wasn't convinced that this was legit. And so the idea that going to California, just blasting off with no safety net, that just really, really seemed crazy. And I remember my first couple of years coming back and going to my reunion and everything, and my cousins and other people are like, so when you moving back, to Ohio? And I was like, wow, nothing against you guys, nothing against Ohio, but I would rather live under a park bench in Golden Gate Park than move back to Ohio. I was following my dream, following my passion, and all they wanted to know was, how was I doing? Was I making it? Was I surviving? And I told them, I said, look, if I don't come back to the reunion in June every year, it's really bad. Then you can assume the very, very worst. If I make it back here, then everything's great. That's how I'm going to define success. I'm leaving on a jet plane. Their attitude there was wait and see. And that's something you got to get used to. That's about the best reaction you're going to get out of the people that are skeptical, is you get them up to the point where they're saying, okay, show me, make me a believer. Now I'm a believer. So how do you convince your family that there's nothing to worry about with you and your poker? Well, we're going to get to that at the end, but in the meantime, I just want to say that when people are coming at you in a way that is upsetting you, you have to understand that deep down, it's because they care about you. Just try to remember that at some level, they're coming from a place of love and caring. How do you convince your friends that you're not chasing an impossible dream?
To dream the impossible dream.
There's no easy way to do this at the beginning because you're so full of emotion and so full of excitement. It's really hard to put yourself in other people's shoes and try to picture what they're thinking and how crazy they think you are. But just be honest and just be straightforward and even honest about your doubts. So it's okay if you say, well, I'm giving this a shot. Yeah, I don't know for sure if it's going to work, but this is what I'm doing. And I've done all the work to do it, and there are professional poker players out there, and I'm going to try to be one. For me, the job that I was quitting to go full-time pro in 1990 was musician. And at that point, I'd been playing in a band with the same 4 guys and sound man. We had our crew for 5 years, and we were playing 5 or 6 nights a week for 5 hours a night in country bars. I mean, that is a lot of music, a lot of togetherness. Now, they knew I was serious about poker, but they really weren't ready for me to just say, hey, I'm taking off, I'm done, I'm going to play poker for a living. I had developed a hearing situation. I had lost basically half my hearing in my left ear, and I had to wear earplugs. And so that was ultimately the reason I left. But I'd already had it in my mind that someday, when I was too old to rock and roll, maybe I'd go full-time pro. So the hearing situation just kind of accelerated the whole thing. And they supported me. They sort of knew I was willing to take on a risky adventure. But they thought I was crazy. I know that. I could just tell by how they looked at me. They were like, what the heck? You're going to just play poker for a living and nothing else? People just can't fathom it. And these are people that already knew me and already knew I had some poker skills. It's never going to be easy to explain this stuff. Next up is life partners, your most intimate team member. So for this, I'm just going to refer back to more of the letter my client wrote me because, again, he just nailed it. How can I ever get my fiancée to understand that poker is more likely to provide a stable long-range income than working for some asshole who could fire me on a whim?
This will be your last week of employment at this company.
So I answered that question to him in an email, and then I wrote it up, and that became part of the article that I mentioned, and I'm just going to read that now. If you are a poker pro, or you plan to be, and you enter into a romantic relationship with someone who thinks that reading hands is something fortune tellers do, that's what writers call different scripts. It's a comedic writing device. For example, John and Mary are about to meet for the very first time. They're both excited and nervous. John thinks he's going on a blind date, and Mary thinks she's meeting a long-lost half-brother. A messy and hilarious conversation ensues until something clues them to the mix-up. In the story of your love relationship that is strained by your poker ambition, the problem is that your scripts don't match. Your script has you playing stellar poker for decades and making tons of money, and your partner's script predicts poverty and support groups. But that's okay, because here's the great thing about scripts. You can rewrite them. Let's go back to that line my client used when he said that it's like explaining to them the meaning of life. I'm talking now about everyone now, family, friends, lovers, everybody. What's so frustrating is that when you really get into poker and you learn how to think like a poker player and how to do the rational, logical analysis of decision making and, analyzing what the variables are, assigning value to variables, putting the right weighting to each variable, coming up with a decision, based on incomplete information and based on patterns and all of this stuff. It's such a beautiful way to think and solve puzzles and problems, whether it's poker or regular life. And that's part of the excitement that we have about this whole thing, is just the thinking process. And so when we're talking to somebody and we're explaining to this, the difference between short-term luck and long-range edge as being the meaning of life, it's like, wow, yeah. Not only are you trying to convince them that poker is a viable income, but you actually want to share with them this new wisdom you've had, because it's going to make your life better and maybe it'll help them too. And it's almost like you're evangelical, or it can be, and that's the spirit I got from my client's letter.
This is my quest.
When you're talking to somebody who loves you and cares about you, don't just keep going into all the analytical stuff. Tell them about your aspirations and your dreams and your goals and your passion, and let them know that and feel that. I wrote just a couple words on this. I'm just going to read them. Tell them you have a dream and that you're going to go for it, with or without their emotional support. But you know that your chances of success will be way better if you do have their emotional support. So yeah, you can kind of guilt trip them a little bit, but also seriously though, this is what they need to know. They need to know that it's not just about making a living for you. It's about following your dream, about doing what you really want to do. And that that if you don't take a shot at this, you're going to regret it forever. And just tell them whatever is true.
To fight the unbeatable foe.
So I'm going to finish up here with my answer to the question, how do I convince my family, friends, and lovers that I'm not completely loony for wanting to be a professional poker player? It's up to you, and only you, as a player who has adopted the pro mindset, to do the patient work of rewriting scripts for your family, friends, and lovers, however many times it takes, until everyone is reading from the same page. I'm talking about the part of your story when your people stop worrying about what you're doing and start appreciating what you've done and what you're trying to do. Only you can quiet the skeptics, and it takes way more than words. The only way to prove to your world that you can live a happy life as a poker pro is to do it. As they say in the writing trade, show, don't tell.